Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Atomic Mass Transmissions Live. Hope all of you in the States had a fantastic Thanksgiving holiday. Everyone else in the world, hope you just had a great last week. We, of course, were off celebrating and enjoying family and friends and all of that good stuff. We're back for our last week of transmissions before we take a break for the holiday season. So many of us are going to be enjoying some time off in December. So instead of just having like a random spotty schedule, we decided to just kind of take the rest of the month of December off. So you're going to see Dallas tomorrow at 1 p.m. Pacific, and then we will not be back until January of next year in 2023. With that said, I have one last thing to paint. We're going to be painting Boba Fett, the Daimyo of most Espa today. I have some exciting stuff to actually work on. I have a bunch of these Artifact X paints, Archive X. I keep calling them Artifact X. Archive X paints, for those who are unaware of what Archive X is, they are paints based off of one-to-one color swatches from the actual props from Star Wars movies. So they're supposed to be very, very prop accurate. And we're just going to have fun. I've never used these before, but we're going to try to do a screen accurate Boba Fett, Daimyo of most Espa. So we're just going to see how these paints work and have some fun, hang out for an hour, and then head on out. All right, so here we go. I've already kind of set up my paints. I picked out the Archive X stuff that I thought was going to work best for the new Boba. Obviously, most of these colors are based off of the original Boba Fett armor from the original trilogy, so I don't know quite how perfectly accurate they're going to be to anything else. But we've got our greens, which look really, really good compared to like what you see for Boba Fett's armor. So we have our highlight, we have kind of our shade. I like this one. So I think we're going to start with this as our mid-tone, and we'll kind of work down from there. All right, let's see how these, I thin them out with a little bit of water, so we'll see if that works. How many coats we need, probably a couple of thin coats as usual. We'll just see how it goes. Slop there. I'm just going to see if I can clean up some of that. Boop. Because that's where my yellow is going to go. And it'd be nice to not have to paint my yellow over the green. So, I'm going to knock out the helmet here. So these are pretty thin, so that's nice. Over the zenith, kind of play with that. And if we need to, we'll do 2 to 3 thin coats, depending on the color it looks like. But so far, I like how smooth they are. Be as careful around that. Best not to get any on space beans here. So yeah, I mean, like overall, like the Boba Fett green. His armor color is really, really weird. We struggled a decent amount in terms of just when Dallas was painting the Studio Mini, which he did quite a while ago at this point. I think it was like this time last year. He was working on the Studio Mini. We did a stream on it. I think he talked a decent amount about how how finding that right green color was pretty tricky. He had to mix it himself, and that kind of set us on the path where we started looking a bit more at the Archive X stuff. Just getting those nice like prop accurate colors right out of the bottle instead of having to mix a lot of it. Can be really, really useful. And I know Tony's been using these a bit as well on some stuff that he's been working on. So I'm glad that I'm getting my shake. Kind of messing around with them just to see how it all goes. Yeah, they are a little different as well. When he repaints his armor, I mean, you get the original like beatdown armor, which is when he takes it back from Mando, and then it is a lot more turquoisey in Book of Boba, so this isn't going to be quite perfectly accurate. But as far as like OG trilogy green Boba, this looks really, really close to me. It's got that nice amount of like blue to it. So far, for my first color, I'm pretty impressed. I think as we build up our layers, we're going to see kind of it come out a little bit better too. Color mixing is awesome, especially when you're working on, you know, an individual miniature or a unique squad, something that you don't have to replicate over and over. Obviously, if you're gonna paint several units like your core troopers, you probably don't want to have your core, or really any of your like rank and file, relying too much on mixing unless you're gonna go all in and kind of like pre-mix your own color and then keep a stock of the pots around, because getting that color match can be tricky. You know, having that uniformity between everything can be a big challenge. And if I'm going to be painting a whole bunch of troopers, I don't want to have to stop and remix, and there's just a time. There's just a time to it. So it's nice to not have to guess. But color matching can be really fun if you have the time to do it. For sure. That side of the helmet is like a gold plug. I have to look at my reference again really quick. Doing it right. Armored cowl spot. And go there. Come over to here. Here. Go back through. The backpack, I know, also kind of changes from the different seasons and episode to episode and stuff. The one that I found, which I'm going to use because it's the cheateriest one, it was just basically all green. We're painting on a clock, so normally I'd probably spend about 3 to 4 hours on this guy. Points update for Legion is still set for December. Yep, as was talked about, I think a couple times on stream, and I know Anne and social media folks have announced it in a couple other places as well. So still well on track. You should be seeing. Ooh, what does your little rocket look like, my man? All right, we'll leave you alone for right now then. Yep, Legion points adjustments come in. Probably not too spoiler to say there'll be a updated tournament document as well. So lots of things to look forward to for Legion. out with our red, and this one is the caboose red. So we started with, what was it? Wehrhauser green. Wehrhauser green. And now we're using the caboose red for the red parts of the armor. Which I believe are just his gauntlets, and then the red detailing on his helmet. We'll figure out the black. I didn't feel like any of the darker colors that they had quite fit for the tunic, but the colors obviously vary really strongly depending on the reference that you're using. So you'll notice that if you get like a prop photo, the colors are usually a lot richer. If you get it in the scene, then the lighting has a huge effect on it. So there's a lot of different looks to the same piece, and that's part of what makes color matching and really painting the Studio Mini film accurate really difficult, because you kind of have to decide, are you going off the prop photo, or are you going off the promotional photos, are you going off the actual screen photos and look, and each of those colors is different in really critical ways. So it's just one of those fun little challenges that comes along with working on this stuff and trying to determine where your match is going to be. I have not tried a Boba in white yet, so okay, let's go ahead and move on to the bulk of the suit. So this is going to be a lot lighter than we want it to be in the end, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of knock out this overall gray for his cloth, and then I'll go back through and hit it with like a wash or something. And then we'll do probably not an Archive X paint for the boots, because like I said, so I was like running through the colors. It doesn't have every color under the sun for sure, so we'll have to supplement with some other stuff. This will get us most of the way there, I think. Most of the way there. Let's get up here. Oh. Tight. This would be one of those times where I might consider leaving the gaffy stick off just so I could get into that chest area a little easier. Knock that out. is there? So I know that Boba releases in December, so it's coming right up. I don't know the exact date though. But he's well, I guess next month still, because we're still in November. But man, November is basically over, so he's right around the corner for sure. Which is very exciting. We've talked about a couple times, this is the first fully AMG Legion miniature, so we did it from concept to finish on the sculpt and everything. And as is the way of miniatures, this man took about 18 months from start to finish. So it feels like we've been living with Mr. Daimyo for a long, long time, but he still hasn't even officially hit the wild yet. He's close. He's close, he's close, he's close. It's really quick. It's just so much black. Everything's black. So black. Great. We'll really have to play with our black shades here, because, well, you can get away with kind of the same tone overall on a costume on this small miniature man, this little miniature Boba. We're going to want a little bit of differences in tone and color to really help those different areas pop out. So we'll kind of start making our decisions based on the different types of black we want to see on different areas. So like the overcoat, kind of the jumpsuit part, we'll want to have a slightly different variance than like these boot coverings, which are also like a black leather and stuff. So, some failed concepts. Well, in terms of the pose, we went through, I can't even remember. It was probably close to 40 or 50 pose sketches and pictures, trying to figure out how best to do the gaffy stick. We knew we really wanted to showcase him with that weapon as kind of like the primary element. It made him feel immediately different from Imperial Boba, OG Trilogy Boba. It's a very iconic moment from The Mandalorian when he pulls it out, and then obviously it becomes a really big focal point in the Boba Fett series itself, the meaning behind the stick and everything. So it was really important to us that we make sure that it appeared on this miniature. And oh my gosh, that's not shook at all. I thought I shook it enough. I did. So it was like this. It was the thing that we're like, okay, we're gonna make sure that he has the gaffy stick, because the gaffy stick's really important. It's very cool. It's a great moment. It's really it all ties it together. The problem is finding a pose for a miniature where they're swinging a stick, and we wanted Boba to be really active. We didn't want him to just be standing there. No hero pose for Boba. We wanted to get that idea that he's coming into town and he's, cracking stormtrooper. Wow. Can't say that word. Stormtrooper skulls and, just looking exceptionally badass. And that wound up being pretty difficult because a lot of poses for when you're swinging something, it can be hard to find that right moment where it looks like you're in mid-swing. where the miniature, the look of the miniature looks really sharp and is clean, and the story that's being told is really open. And you don't want them to look like kind of like a golfer from a galaxy far, far away. You want them to look like a warrior. And one of the things that you always want to think about too is, what's visible on the mini. You want, especially with a character, you want to be able to see their face. You want to be able to see their chest, more or less. You don't want them hunched over. And you try to balance all these different things while getting the pose right. And so some of the concessions or the tricks that we use in order to get a really powerful like swing and some good action into this miniature revolved around, putting him on his tactical rock here. So by putting the leg up, we elevate the miniature and we kind of tip him back so that he's not completely hunched over. You still have the power of the swing. You can feel it, it's coming down. It just opens up the look of the mini really well. And obviously, we're always looking at miniatures from this direction, right? You're almost never looking at them straight on unless they're on your shelf. Most of the time in gameplay, you're looking, 45 degrees or more down. And so the more you bend a miniature over, the more you push it this way, or the more you scrunch it down, the less you're going to see, because you're only going to see these angles. So a lot of the posing and like, how do you get accurate, physicality and interesting action and dynamism, but also try to minimize the amount that you don't see of the mini, to think about that player's eye view. How are you primarily interacting and seeing the miniature itself? And then what can you do to kind of like cheat those? And there are certain poses that you just kind of throw out because they'll never work. Because you don't want that mini to be closed off. You don't want it to be hard to see, hard to paint, those kinds of things. And it's a fine balance in between. And obviously it's very subjective in terms of like what works, what doesn't, Some people really dislike certain poses over others, Some people are like, well, I just want my minis to all look like hero pose, so very stoic, statuesque. Not a lot of dynamism because it's a strong, confident look. And I think that works for certain characters, but also it gets really dull when every single mini's just like 2 feet on the ground, doing their little static hero pose, not really telling the story, not really in the action. So you try to have a good mixture of all those different things. Definitely want to make sure that it works to the character and what they're doing, and again goes back to telling that story. And especially with character minis, you get that moment to be like, okay, yes, it's going to wind up on the table and it's going to be next to units and troopers and all that stuff, but it's also going to be a centerpiece, a focal point. Ideally people are going to wind up being really inspired to make great miniature art out of it, and it might wind up in a painting competition. And so you want to make sure that you're always thinking about all the different opportunities and options for a way a miniature might be looked at or used by various people, especially when it comes down to iconic characters. You want to go that extra mile to make them really feel special, and they should stand out, right? Like you want somebody to immediately see Boba Fett across the table, or when somebody's walking by who may not play the game but knows Star Wars. You want those iconic characters to really jump out at them, because it's ultimately the characters are kind of what make the world and make everybody really excited about exploring the game more and stuff like that. And sometimes that's really easy because you just give them a lightsaber, and the lightsaber is maybe the greatest character signifier in all of modern storytelling, because the second you see that glowing lightsaber, you don't have to know what's going on. You just have to see the saber and you're like, oh, I get it. That's exciting. That's cool. There is an option to have him without his helmet. So if you don't want to have the helmet, you can do the unhelmeted version. And he's got, that was a fun one to really work on. We pulled a lot of reference of, we pulled a lot of facial reference from the Mandalorian season when he's like just going ham with the gaffy stick and beating the poor snot out of all those stormtroopers. So there was a point in time where my messaging inbox was literally filled with angry Tamir Morrison faces. Like, just, what about this one? What about that one? And we go back and forth on which expressions we thought would read best and all of that, and kind of work off of those. So it was a pretty funny time. One of the benefits of getting to work on stuff like this. There we go. I'll use this for the boot coverings. Pineapple regarding pizza. No, I'm not a pineapple fan. But to be fair, I just don't like pineapple that much. That was amazing. Fantastic. Whatever. I'm actually amazed that that hasn't happened earlier, but here we are. It's too bad because you missed that moment. Well, I've got a lot of this Negro Gray from Scale now. Like so much. It's the last stream, it's fine. It's fine. Let's not worry about it. Shh. No one even knows. Until you show the palette and they just see the massive explosion of paint that just occurred because there was a clog and I just ham-fisted my way through it. It was fine. All right. So again, we're just going to kind of like knock out these boot coverings. We're going to make them darker. We're going to grab probably a black brown for the boots. It is a Pagani amount of paint. Like, it's been a long time since we had somebody really just make a massive mess over literally everything. I got every table. It's great. It's fine. I can't focus on that right now. Otherwise, we won't get as far as I want to on this. On this mini. It's not a big deal. It's fine. Shh. Dallas is gonna be like, what happened? I'll be like, I don't know. It just suddenly was covered in paint. This yellow is going to need... That yellow's definitely going to need some orange in it, but I did grab an orange, so that'll be okay. It's a little too... The pauldrons that Boba has are really interesting. They almost look translucent in some shots. I'll have to go back and look at what his little leg missile launcher looks like. I think it's just metal though. Oh, we can't see that one, so that's okay. Let that dry, and then we'll go back in for another coat. Oh yeah, there's a lot of great characters and unit opportunities and stuff from both Mandalorian and the Book of Boba that we haven't even gotten to yet. But I have no doubt that we will eventually get there. I mean, there's a huge amount of opportunities still from different medias, you know, Clone Wars show. We got Tales of the Jedi now. It's expanding on things. A lot of good opportunities with things like Andor, and yeah, I think we're not going to run out of options for Legion for a long time. By the time we do, I guarantee you there'll be more cool stuff, because it's a galaxy. It's a whole galaxy to explore. As long as creative storytellers keep telling cool creative stories. We haven't even really, Legion hasn't even really explored the whole Saw's partisans or any of that stuff. A lot of good content left to go. Lots of good, cool things left to go. That for simplicity's sake. Yeah, you don't have to be super fancy, you know. Just getting all the base coats on can be a huge base coats, and then dark lining. You know, if you treat it like traditional animation, you think about like all your favorite animated cartoons and stuff, especially non-CGI, you know, hand-drawn, color-celled stuff. They don't use many colors at all. You know, they kind of leave it all to they kind of leave it all up to, we'll use this one up. Maybe not make it explode everywhere. They leave it all up to just solid color blocking and then really good definition of the different segments. You know, they figure out the blocking of the volumes and all that stuff just using dark lining, and it can be a really effective, really effective technique even for painting a miniature. Once you kind of define the space with your dark line, it's pretty impressive how easy the eye can read it, and how you'll get a lot of that natural shading and stuff just from making it easy for the eye to parse the different segments and sections. So flat colors aren't, you don't need to spend a lot of time on highlights and everything, smooth blends, all of that stuff, if you don't want to. Obviously, doing so will really take that miniature to the next level, but there's a stylistic choice that you can also make. Ooh. Like making a huge mess, like I just did. Luckily, we can clean that too. I think his little vents are supposed to be red as well. I have to get on my image for that, but I think that's true. Of course, you know, again, like on Boba here, because so much of his so much of his look, his cloth is black, where you'd spend a lot of time if you wanted to get really, really into it and make this miniature stand out, is in working those different colors of black. Like if you look at the Studio Mini, I know Dallas for the cloth and the jumpsuit went to a very heavy brown. A very heavy brown black. And really accentuated that it's not a traditional flat black kind of cloth. And you could do more of a blue black if you wanted to. Looking at the images, I think the blue black kind of works. You could obviously just work in grays like I'm gonna do here. Because I think that'll give a nice flat kind of like cloth effect to everything. But a lot of different ways to approach it and making everything different. Come through and kind of really quickly try to block out some of the highlights in the cloth. And I've really started to enjoy kind of a more stylistic animated approach where I don't worry as much about transitions and color fades and stuff. I'm just kind of like blocking out the different colors. And then if I need to, I can go over the areas with a quick glaze to really transition the colors. Use a little bit of layering to build up different areas. But the eye, just like we were talking about with like color blocking, it's the same idea, just like taking it kind of to the next step. Your eye does really well at just reading the different segments if you kind of like colored in, and even though it's not particularly like smooth or perfect, the eye kind of reads it pretty well enough to where it like looks pretty cool. It's fairly easy, simple to do. And I am by no means as good at being able to pick out those shapes as I want to be, but I have continued to practice and work at it, and I feel like I'm getting better every time I do it. Just kind of learning the ins and outs of everything. Yep, around the mess. I don't have time to grab a different palette, and I don't feel the need to, so I'm just gonna, do the thing here. I typically have a messy palette, not that messy, but okay, let's see. I just want to come back through and kind of like reclaim some of those lines there. I really love how that one turned out, so come through and knock that out. here. Yep. Clean up that line. There. And then swap out our brush really quick. Go to our very light gray. A little bit. Coming over here. Really quick. Really fast, kind of like rough highlights there, right there, across the knuckles. Get those going. It's like those little glints of light. Help pick out that stuff. Come down here. Do a little swoopy swoops. Go over the top here. That in. There. This gray absolutely needs a little bit more water to it. It's not quite as smooth as the other one. It's interesting. We're learning things. This lighter gray color is a little chunkier than all the other ones we've used so far from the Archive X. So it wants a little bit more liquid. Down. All right, we can refine that a little bit later, but that's kind of the rough idea here. I like that as much. Yeah, I don't. Easy fix though. Okay, let's go to the armor really quick. And knock in some of these areas here. I'm basically just looking for any place that really needs to be highlighted, and we're missing the yellow on the top of the thing. Even though this chest piece is mostly in shadow, let's get like a little bit of that highlight working in there on the corner. Like maybe some right here along the edge. Let's drag that down a little bit. This corner over here, pull that, fix our mistake there, because now we're going a little faster than we should be. It's okay. Let's see. So, come in here. Block out the shape of that. Helmet, build up that highlight color a little bit more. Over here. Just work over there, there. Once again, scrub our little mistakes from there. And then maybe we'll do a really quick highlight there. Come around here. Pop that out. Think about like our cylinder here. Maybe take a little bit of our massive amount of black because, you know, we have it. Make some kind of a shade color with our base. And we can use this and go in and like darken up that. Make sure that underneath the mask is nice and defined. Like that. Maybe even accentuate the helmet. And then a lot of like, this is where a lot of the, I think the backpack would come to life, is adding in those shades. Especially where the different segments and stuff exist. And you could do this with a shade wash too, but kind of just blocking it out. Just a different way to do it. Over there, come like right here with the helmet, blocking that. One over here. This just gives you those nice color variances. Really adds to that. Style and look, and you can even go further, add even more black for those really dark areas. I mean, you can just use straight black, which is one of the cool things about when you're trying to do those more traditional animated styles. It's like you can just go in with like straight black and paint the undersides of things with straight black and everything, and it just looks right, and it kind of feels like cheating because you're like, I didn't really paint that part. It doesn't matter. It's in shadow. It should be that color. And we kind of rinse and repeat that for the rest of the mini. And if you go too far with one of your shades, you can always come back and reclaim it later. Some of your mid colors, and you just kind of go back and forth, and this is where you get pretty lost in the weeds because you can really work these areas a lot. And the more you work at them, the better they start to look, and you start to really get an idea of what you want to accomplish, where your light source is, how the different shapes are working, the volumes that you want to pull out. And it's just a back and forth effort. All right, so let's see, we're not going to get to the stick today. We're really going to finish any of his leathers. We got lots of work left to do on this fella, but I'll just take him home and continue to plug away at him. Not a character that I was going to burn through. Let's take, just real quick, a bit of the orange, or a lot of the orange, one of the two. Kind of mix up a shade for that pauldron. Color that stuff back. Knock that in. A bit more orange. Kind of looking to make a little nice shade for down here since it's so much in the dark. That. Black. Clean up the edges around the plate. There we go. I'm whispering. I wasn't supposed to whisper. Now I'm talking to myself, though. We're in the zone. Okay. We got some pretty good progress on this fella. I'm really happy with where the greens are going. I think they're mostly done. We obviously have a lot of work to do on the reds, probably some more work in the yellows, and then the leathers and everything else. So easily another few hours on this Boba Fett, but we got him started.
I was hoping for Beskar Boba.
Beskar Boba? No. That's the Archive X. Come on. You got a mess, though. I did give you a mess. A massive mess.
I see that. I gotta clean that tomorrow.
You do. Bring in the squeeze bottle. It went everywhere. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and myself as well. I will be saying adieu for the rest of the year because, again, tomorrow, 1 p.m. Pacific with Dallas Kemp will be our final stream of 2022. We will see you all back in January of 2023 for more Atomic Mass Transmissions, hobby, and gameplay action. Till then, be good to each other, stay safe, have a wonderful December, and we'll see you next year. Bye. Oh, it's so messy. It's so messy.